Hey everyone, this is Marvelous Matt Knicks, and I like aliens. Welcome to What Do You Like? The podcast where we get to know a person through their passions and hobbies. Today, we are very lucky to have Marvelous Matt Knicks joining us, professional wrestling superstar, owner of Freelance Wrestling, the premier wrestling company in Chicago, and maybe the world. I mean, we'll see. Once this pandemic's over, I think there's going to be some big expansion plans, I'm sure. I'm sure you're taking down WWE soon.
We're coming for them.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. Wrestling's fun, but there's a billion wrestling podcasts. You've probably heard Matt Knicks on them. But we're here for a very important topic, and a topic that's some might say would be out of this world.
Ooh.
And that is aliens.
Aliens.
And not the movie, not the sequel to the hit movie Alien. We're talking about the living creatures that could be among us, or at least out in the world, or out in the universe.
Well, I think they're here. They're definitely here.
Well, we're gonna get to the bottom of this today. So, really quickly, just to start this conversation off, obviously aliens are a big part of your life. Obviously, they've influenced you. Where did this kind of interest in aliens and extraterrestrials start?
I mean, it's always been like something that I've been interested in. I mean, the whole space in general has always been like a really big interest of me ever since I was really little. I always tell my mom, I was like, man, if I didn't ever discover wrestling, I might have become an astronaut. And then she gets mad at me. It's just like, well, like you could have done that instead. And she jokes, but no, like I've always like just, whether it be like watching movies or just, I mean, nobody can probably remember looking back when they were a child and just like looking up at the sky for the first time and like seeing stars and just looking at that and being like, wow. Like I do remember when I was really young, we would go to Florida to visit family all the time. And sometimes we would drive. And a lot of times when you're outside of a big city, when you're living in a big city, you don't really get to see and kind of take in the full effect of the night sky because of like, light pollution and that stuff. But being on the road and like, driving to Florida. And I remember one time we were stopping in the middle of the night and just like looking up at the sky and just being like, whoa, like these are real stars. These are stars, because you don't see that stuff back in Chicago. And it's always just been something that like I want to learn more about. And I had so many space like books about the planets and stuff. And it's like I said about my mama before, she thought I was going to be like a genius because of all these like books that I was reading as a kid, that just learning about like stars and stuff like that. But it's funny because like when I was really little, I was like afraid of aliens, specifically E.T. That movie like terrified me as a kid.
Of all aliens, E.T. was the one that scared you?
Yeah, like I don't know what it was. I think it's just because he looked so like real in the movie. Like it was like a puppet or like like an actual like prop as opposed to like CG. And yeah, like, and it's funny because he's not even scary in the movie. Like the movie's not scary. It's just I would have like nightmares about it. And like I remember at Universal Studios in Florida, we went on the ET ride, and I was just like, I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and I just remember like walking through. If anybody's ever been on that ride, like the whole line getting into it is like just like in the forest kind of, and it's dark, and there's just, it's like scary. It's scary. As a kid, I was like standing there with my thumbs over my eyes and my hands covering my ears, and just like I didn't want to see anything. And it's just funny to think that like, the rest of my life, as I got older, not being afraid of aliens, but more so wanting to learn more about them.
Sure. And I can absolutely agree with the ET ride at Universal. I was absolutely terrified of it as well.
It's spooky.
Jaws, not at all.
Oh yeah, I missed the Jaws ride.
Yeah, Jaws was always fun, but like I don't know, and it wasn't like it was never like intentionally scary. I think the biggest thing is like when you're like on the bike and you're just like flying over.
Oh yeah.
You're like in with like a from what I remember again, this is many years ago. I'm quite old at this point. There's like just a little seatbelt.
Oh yeah.
And
You're
it
like
just
barely
didn't
strapped
seem
in.
yeah, it just didn't seem safe. And I was like, this is not gonna end well. On top of the fact that you're dealing with aliens, so
Yeah. But no, like like I guess my obsession, I would even say, with aliens and stuff is just like, I mean, there's so much stuff about like our planet that we just like, I guess like we just kind of accept as like being like fact. And I always kind of say like I have these conversations with people at work all the time, probably more times than they want, but just like saying like, oh, like we like science says, you know, this, or like, you know, the earth is this, you know, this many years old, or just like things that we accept as scientific fact. But like you look back in throughout history, there's so much stuff that they were like, oh yeah, this is how it is. And then we realized, no, that's very wrong. Like most things, you know, we learn, we learn more information, but like, I look back and a lot of people like kind of scoff at the idea of me mentioning like the show Ancient Aliens, because they're like, oh, it's just like some bullshit show that's on, you know, History Channel. It's not real. It's just entertainment. But a lot of the stuff that they talk about on there, that I'm like, if somebody came out and said, like, if scientists were like, oh yeah, like by the way, all this stuff that they talk about, like, you know, the idea that like that human you know civilization was created, like engineered by, you know, extraterrestrials that came down, and they were kind of like, oh, look at these like monkey people, like I wonder if we like mess with their genes a little bit and like kind of help them and teach them how to use tools and teach them technology, you know. I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, that's bullshit. Like I'd be like, oh, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. There's so many missing pieces of like our own history that we're just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's literally like the missing link is what they like, a lot of people will refer back to. And I mean, I don't know. It could be aliens. I know that they talk about like, and not to go straight down the rabbit hole now. There's like like people that talk about like this race of alien called the Anunnaki that like came here and like specifically altered the genetic code of like, you know, the Homo erectus or whatever was before us, and caused us to evolve caused us to evolve like at a quicker rate than we normally would have, specifically to mine gold on the earth because they needed it for their home planet. And that's like a whole thing though.
Well, I mean, obviously this shows like this is definitely something you're interested in. You know a lot about it, and I think it really. I mean, some people might scoff at like, oh, there's no proof or anything, but you bring up a really good point. Like science is a study that is never done learning.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know like what they will find, and I'm pretty sure you won't find very many scientists that say, I'm absolutely certain about this. I think that's the scientific method, is to question everything.
Yeah.
And I accept, but the one other thing is they don't accept anything until there's evidence. So I think it's a good idea to like always be searching for that evidence. And I think that's, I'll say, the more rational people that look at alien information, that's what they're looking for. And I feel like you're definitely in that realm. Like you're not gonna just believe anything, but you're definitely open to the idea. And like you said, if a scientist came and said, yep, this is how it is, you're like, okay. I mean, obviously there's been evidence, and obviously, but I also wonder if there's more of a, how do I say this? Less about like finding the scientific fact, but more the like the almost magic of it.
Yeah. I mean, like I always kind of bring this up too when I discuss about like when people are like, oh, there's no way that's real. Like, how could that be real? And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that I like 1,000% believe that is factual truth, but I'm also not saying that it isn't. And if you look back, like you think about like the Aztecs in Mexico, um, in ancient India. I mean, there's writings in ancient Indian texts in the Bhagavad Gita that kind of references like, nuclear war, even like around that time. And this is like, thousands of years ago, and like not really that long ago. But a lot of these like ancient like civilizations have like very similar stories or like legends of like, oh, the gods came down on their like flaming chariot and they bestowed upon us like good fortune and like and technology and like and they worship these things as gods. And like, is it really that far-fetched to kind of think of like, what if humans were just kind of like doing their own thing, living life, and like this alien just comes down in his ship, and to them, not really knowing how to comprehend that information, they're kind of just like, oh, that's God. That is our God, because he's coming down from the sky, he's flying, he looks different from us. And they started worshiping them as gods, even like the ancient Egyptians too. I mean, that's kind of like a very popular theory, is that like that, or for people that believe that like a lot of the ancient Egyptians, or even like the pharaohs, were actually like extraterrestrials that kind of came here and like started to like, they not like enslave humanity for like, whatever purposes, but more so is like mining minerals from this planet. And that's kind of like what a lot of theorists will believe, is that these aliens come here to, take a lot of our minerals from our planet.
That just really brings up, I don't know if you've ever watched this. There's a cartoon called Steven Universe. Ever seen that?
I'm familiar with it. I've never watched it though.
Oh man, it is probably one of my favorite cartoons. But the whole basis of it is there are these gem creatures. They are creatures that can physically manifest from gems.
Mm-hmm.
And they historically have traveled across the universe to take over planets, to mine minerals from them, to take them back to what they call as home world. And now that I think about it, it's like that might be that the basis of that show might come from the what people believe were kind of the role of ancient aliens.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it could have drawn inspiration from that.
But so I really want to kind of dive more into kind of what really, because I mean, there's a lot of conspiracies out there. There's a lot of fringe topics in science that are always very interesting. And then also you can go into just other forms of stories, other forms of science. What really drew you to extraterrestrials? Was it just your youth interest in the outer space? Is there something else that might have also drawn you towards that, like within your personality?
I mean, I think it also mostly it has to do with like the mystery of it all, and the idea that like this is something that, the existence of extraterrestrials or their presence on Earth, whether or not they have, whether or not you believe that or not, is like, if our government knew or knows, and like A, is keeping it from us, or B, working with these aliens and, developing technology. I mean, if you look at like if you really look at it throughout history, from like the 1800s and like early 1900s to like up until honestly up until about like when the Roswell crash happened in like the 20s or 30s, human technology, like, or just the way we lived our lives, was not really changing that much. Like we were kind of like still in that like industrial age of like running on coal or steam powered or anything like that. But like if you look at the way technology has progressed since the 20s and 30s, even like from like the 70s and beyond, like I feel like there was such a technology boom, even like specifically like the in the early 90s when like the internet came about and everything. Like there's just so like a real quick influx of technology that a lot of people sometimes speculate is maybe we found like we reverse engineer technology from these ships that we found, and that's kind of how we were able to have smartphones or like Bluetooth and all this crazy shit that we have nowadays, that like if you would talk to somebody like 20, 30, 40 years ago, they would be like, well, this is like science fiction. I don't believe that would even be possible. That what we're doing right now, talking to each other on a computer, it's who knows?
Yeah. And I think that really that kind of drives down into the like you said, the mystery. Like, it's not something that we can prove right now. So I wonder, like, are you the type of person that if you have a question, do you go directly to your phone and Google it, or do you think about it for a while, try to like marinate in it?
Like a question as in like something like specific or something more philosophical?
Either one.
For something that like is like more of a concrete answer, I would definitely like Google it. But if it's something more philosophical or like something based in theory, I definitely love having conversations with people and kind of being like, hey, this is something that I'm thinking about. I'm not saying I believe it, and I'm not saying I don't believe it, but what do you think? And my thing is like and I know a lot of people will agree, is that like question everything. Like, don't ever take anything for like certain fact. Like specifically, like nowadays with like the way the COVID information is kind of being skewed a little bit by our fucking president. You can't really like trust anything like that you're seeing 100% at least. But it's like it's always been like so specifically with like aliens or anything paranormal or like you know I'm very interested in like cryptozoology as well, and a lot of these like legends or myths about like creatures that that live on Earth, and that it's like, oh, like so I saw a Sasquatch, but like we haven't been able to find the Sasquatch in forever. It's just like I like the idea that there are things out there that people will 100% tell you that they saw this thing or they know this thing exists, but we have absolutely no proof. But we also don't have proof that it doesn't exist, because there's so many like things that are like clues, almost clues, like to that point towards things like this existing. I mean, how many times have you seen like those videos of like those balls in the sky, like the glowing balls that are just kind of moving around, like boop, 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 just kind of in the sky, just moving in a way that would not be able to be recreated by a man-made craft. And then it stops, and it just and it's gone. It just shoots out of view. How many times have we seen those things? And people are like, it's probably something else. It's probably this. It's probably this. But like you look at it and you're just like, I can't explain what that is. And like the whole like UFO, it literally stands for unidentified flying object, and that is exactly what that is. What you're seeing there, like we cannot say definitively what that is. I mean, even now we have the Pentagon like released like footage from a fighter pilot that like was basically chasing something, a craft that he was like, oh, what is this thing? And he started chasing it, and a lot of people are like, oh, they were saying it was like a bird or something that like wasn't there. They anything but. Nobody wants to admit that it's like, oh, that maybe it's aliens. But the thing that was really interesting to me about that is that whatever that thing was actively jamming the like tracking system on his plane. And like that's not like something that could like that's not like a malfunction. That's not something that he like was like, oh, like I hit the wrong button and it's like not working. Like it's something that thing had to actively like do. And that's like also an act of war technically. So not like that they're coming to war with us, but like if that was like if like let's say that was North Korea or something, like testing out a craft, and by them actively jamming their systems, like that would be considered an act of war, and I don't think that anybody would want that. But I'm getting completely off topic now, but
No, I mean that's the topic we're talking about, and obviously this really like highlights that your interest in it, and like it's not something that you just kind of read a book on last week and are now like, obviously this has been a long time passion for you, and I think it really speaks to your openness. You're not closed-minded at all. You're very like, all possibilities are on the table until they're off. And I think the world needs a lot of people like that are going to consider things that other people are just not. There's like, well, I don't see anything that's a fact, so I don't believe it. And I think this is quarantine Jeremy, what he does now. I've been watching a YouTube channel called Legal Eagle. I don't know why, I'm not a lawyer. But one thing that they always say is, like, in movies, there's always like this like magical piece of evidence that proves the guilt or proves his innocence.
Mhm.
It's like, this, without a shadow of doubt, this is what happened because of this one piece of evidence. But then he always says, like, that doesn't exist. It's always a collection of evidence that kind of builds together to prove your case. It's never one thing. And I think that's like, people need to think about, like, in the rest of the world, like, if there are aliens on Earth right now, we're not just going to see an alien walk down the street and identify that's an alien from another world, and they have technology we don't have. Like, it's going to be a collection of little things, like the video that the fighter pilot. It's going to be all these stories from all these different people, like photographs and things like that. I mean, and maybe we'll find, like, all of a sudden we'll find an alien craft, crash onto a beach somewhere, and we'll find it. But I mean, there's no guarantee that'll ever happen. So it's finding this little piece of information that they'll allow us to kind of get the full story. I think that's what you're doing with, like, what you're looking up, and also the fact that you're not saying this is definitely true.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I was sorry. I was trying to pull this up exactly so I don't fumble my words. You talk about, like, oh, like, if they ever, like, say, like, oh, we found something or found this, is actually, like, I'm trying to find the exact article, but I think this might be close stuff from the Pentagon. So I referenced before about the video that the U.S. Navy released of the thing that the guy was chasing. And that's pretty crazy. Like, if anybody wants to go look that up, just look up U.S. Navy UFO video on YouTube, and you could see the actual footage of, that they filmed from the plane. But the Pentagon has also said, like, recently, that they're prepared to release more information in regardings to UFOs and stuff. And one such thing, and that the New York Times is speculating, or not speculating, they're saying that the Pentagon is basically going to announce soon that, hey, we found crafts on this planet that are not of this world. They basically they're about to release information saying that we found stuff here that isn't made here. That is almost verbatim what they said in the article. And I think, like, especially now, like, with the turmoil in our country and in our world, that I think somebody probably thought that this is the time. This is the time to talk, to finally talk about this, because I mean, this could really unite people. The idea that they're not like a united against a common enemy, not like that, but I mean more like, listen, like, we are definitively going to say, like, supposedly definitively going to say that there is life outside of our world, and we need to get our shit together. So, because, like, if we ever want to, like, learn more about our planet, or even, like, our solar system or the universe, and we need to get our shit together, because if we're going to make contact, we're fucking tearing ourselves apart here. But I always kind of, like, I've talked about that with people before. I was like, hey man, if aliens came down, like, today, and they were just like, yo, I want to take you with us. Like, you'll totally be, taken care of, food, water, you will live out the rest of your days totally fine with us, and we'll teach you all the secrets of the universe, take you all around everywhere, take you to different planets, but you can never come home, and you can never see your friends and family again. And I'm like, would you jump at that opportunity? And everybody I ask always says no. But I'm like, I would within a heartbeat, I would definitely do it. I think.
Wow.
That's a little crazy.
I'd probably be in that group that would say no, because I think I'm definitely not the person that's going to be the first person to jump off a bridge and bungee jump. I'm going to definitely watch 5 people do it and make sure it's safe before I do it. But you're definitely one that I think you put, and I think this, you can tell me if I'm right, but there are a lot of, like, you're the type of person that in life, you don't ever go half-ass in anything. It's very much, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm just not going to do this.
When it comes to things that I'm passionate about, I think definitely in that same mind frame. I mean, like, it's hard, like, that I've had a lot of I have had a lot of interests in my life that I've unfortunately kind of just, like, I was really into doing this, and, like, I kind of just fell out of it. I just don't think I was very passionate about it. But I mean, like, you look at wrestling, I'm very passionate about wrestling, and I've done as much as I can to go as far as I can, with the outlet that I have with running freelance too. Like, everything that I've put in my heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into that company, and, like, have helped build it to what it is now. And it's awesome. And anything that I ever want to do with that, I do it. Like, I don't think about logistics ever. That's, like, partially my downfall. But I just go, okay, I have this vision in my head of something that I want to do. I am going to do everything in my power to make that happen. And usually it does. But I mean, especially with alien stuff, like we're talking about this, I think at the end of the day, I'm mostly passionate about knowledge and learning. Like, I'm constantly, like, in my free time, I'll be on YouTube, and it's like, what am I going to watch? Well, I could watch these, like, wrestling videos, or, like, whatever else. But most of the time I'm watching videos that are just like, here's a video, like, the history of Japan, or, like, here's the history of, like, the development of the colonial colonies during the colonial age. A lot of history videos. Like, I'm constantly like, I don't know this. I want to learn more about this. Let me watch this video about this. And I constantly, I was a good student in high school, and just in school in general, but very only in topics that I was interested in. Science being one of them. And I think that's what helps drive my passion with, like, learning about aliens or in space or anything like that. There's just so much unknown information that I just want. I want to know it all.
Yeah, I mean, in space is, like, as humans, we know so little about it. I think there's 2 things that humans know so little about, and it's space and the deep sea.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just so difficult to physically observe and, like, get out there. And space itself is so vast. I mean, it's an ever growing. We'll never get to the edge of space because we started too late. Like, it just keeps growing faster than we can get there.
It's like, I don't even think, like, we can't, like, fathom that. Like, the idea that, like, it, like, you look up into the sky at night, or even during the day, but at night specifically, because you can see the stars. Those stars are, like, so far away. Like the idea of a light year isn't even, like, on my radar. Like, people are like, oh, it's like 400 light years, and it's like, sorry, like, I mean, I know that's a long way away, but I don't, like, we have no concept of that measurement, really. But, like, the idea that we can see these stars that are, like, even our own sun. I think it's crazy. Like, I was at the beach, and, like, I'm laying there, and I'm just, like, roasting, and I'm like, this is kind of insane that the sun is, like, millions of miles away from where I am, and it is fucking burning my skin. Like, that is crazy. That is an insane amount of power that it is generating to do that. And in the fact that we can see all these stars in the sky that are millions of light years away, and even, like, the idea that the light that we are seeing is actually millions of years old, because that's how long it takes the light to get to us to
Yeah.
see. I'm like, that's so cool. That's so cool to think about that. And like the idea of looking up into the sky and just looking. And if you like, let's say I jumped and I just shot up into the sky and like flew. And if I just kept going, I would literally just keep going until I hit something. But like
Yeah.
the idea that like there is no edge of space, like it just keeps going. How is that possible? I don't, and like it's, I don't want to go off completely off the rails here, but like even like the idea of like the universe starting, like every like science tells us that, you know, every action has like a reaction. The beginning of the universe, like it just happened, but like what made it happen? You know, like it's stuff like that those are the things that I think about. Those are the things that I love talking about, and just speculating is the fun part, because like there is no wrong answer. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the leading theory is the Big Bang, that there was just an explosion and the universe happened. But like for me, like I think about that and I'm like, what, like, so what, like, but how did that explosion happen? Like, who did that? Did somebody do that? Something do that? Or, you know, it's there is no wrong answer, but there is no right
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. Well, I think there is a wrong answer, but we'll never know what it is. Like that we'll never know what the right answer is.
We could, we don't know. Maybe in
That
like 1,000 years we'll have the technology to be able to like measure like dark matter or some shit like that, to
yeah.
realize like I don't know, like
Yeah,
it's
I mean
crazy.
that's the magical part of all this is like you're right. One day humans might know if we can keep our shit together long enough to make it there. But then again, humans aren't that old. Like humans can get wiped out, and whatever takes over the earth might figure that out. Or creatures from, it seems rude to call them creatures, living beings from some distant place might be doing the same discovery, and they might discover something. Like I think the people that say like there's 0% chance that there are extraterrestrials out there. There's living, that we are the only living beings in the entire universe. I think even the most statistical focused scientists out there will say very likely that there's other living beings in the universe.
Yeah, it's incredibly like fucking human, I guess, but very like egotistical to just kind of uh, to assume that we are the only intelligent life out there. Like I refuse to believe that. Like I just, was it a, but was it a happy accident that we even exist? Maybe that's also possible, but I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I think I won't, I know we've probably gone like probably too long at this point, but I'll leave you with this last bit of the, have you ever heard the idea of interdimensional beings, or extra dimensional?
I mean, not that specific term, but I'm sure I've been exposed to what you're going to say, but definitely share with the
So,
audience.
so this whole idea is it kind of takes the whole idea of like aliens and UFOs to like a whole another level of crazy. But I also, but I'm saying like I find it like incredibly fascinating that somebody could even like think of this idea. It's the idea that there are no aliens, there are no UFOs per se in the classic sense, but rather humanity at a certain point reaches a level of like transcendence that we figure out a way to travel through time ish, but more along the lines of traveling interdimensionally. And these aliens, quote unquote, or UFOs, are actually humans from another reality that have figured out a way to pass through. And that's why they, you know, they look a certain way to people, they look different. um but it also, um the idea that it kind of ties into the idea of when people see ghosts as well. They're seeing like, oh, I saw this lady in like 1800s clothing, or like, this weird stuff that we see that is unexplainable, that these are actually like places where the veil of reality is kind of thinner, and what you're seeing is actually just like real life happening at the exact same time as it's happening with where you are, just on another dimensional plane. And that's kind of the idea of how like time really works, is that time is time, any point in time is happening right now at the exact same moment, just in different dimensions. And that is probably one of the craziest things that I've ever heard, but it's also one of the more exciting ideas of that. Like, if we figure out a way to kind of puncture through these different dimensions, and we could go back and visit different points in time and stuff like that. But maybe we already have, and that is the aliens that we are seeing.
Wow.
And I'll leave it at that.
That is next level. But it's really interesting to think about. And I think, again, this really just speaks to your openness and like your wonder and like always seeking knowledge, like you mentioned. I really think that like all this kind of drives down to like who you are as a person.
Crazy.
No, I mean, hey, some of the great thinkers in history, they called crazy at some point. So you never know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. But yeah, as we kind of finish off here, this is a podcast, and I've been trained that at the end of podcasts, you get to plug whatever you want to plug. And you actually have something that you have multiple things you can plug. You're a public person, so go away, say whatever you want to say, what you want. All million listeners I have to this podcast.
To the millions and millions. Yeah, no, I am a very public person, probably more public than I should be. But yeah, if you liked listen to my voice, I have a podcast as well. It's called My Violet Tendencies. It's on every podcast thing, I think. But yeah, you can find that on there. Just search My Violet Tendencies. You can follow my Twitter account for the podcast is My Violet Podcast. My personal Twitter at the Matt Knicks, TheMattKnicks. I have merchandise for sale, both of my own and for the podcast. They're available at prowrestlingtees.com/Matt Knicks. And I'm doing a thing. I'm trying to get people to buy shirts, but more so, any shirt that I have sold and that I will sell for the rest of the year and probably forever, I'm taking the total proceeds and I'm matching that amount, and I'm donating those proceeds to a different charity every month. And every month I'm going to be releasing a different parody design off of different bands that I like, just because I think it's fun and funny, and it's stuff that I think is cool. And I know a lot of people get annoyed by parody designs, so I'm specifically doing this because of those people. But yeah, no, I mean, like, if you want to help out, especially now during COVID times, it's been really hard for a lot of people. And thankfully, I've been working throughout this entire pandemic, so I want to just give back to people in need, and I think I'm going to specifically look more towards different charities, specifically in Chicago, because this is our home, this is our city. We got to look after each other. We are they're my brothers and sisters. So, but yeah, if you want to do that, I'll post up the links on my social media, but also I'll include just a donation link. If you just want to donate and you don't even care about buying a shirt, that's totally cool. All the money's going to the right place.
Well, that's very cool. And I think it's also important with again, we're recording this at the end of July. This will probably go up sometime in August. But I think the national conversation about Chicago has been a very negative one. So I think as residents of Chicago, I think it is important that we kind of highlight that we're not a broken city. I mean, obviously any city needs help, and that's what you're doing. But it's not like we're in the middle of World War III on the streets of Chicago. Like Chicago's doing all right.
We're making do. We're strong people. We don't let let a little bit we don't let a little bit of hardship bring us down.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of ways, Chicago is doing better than a lot of other places. So, I mean, I'm very grateful that we're here, but obviously in this time we're wishing well to everywhere else that is struggling right now. Hopefully this podcast brings a little bit of joy to you. If you've listened this far, I want to thank you. Again, you can reach this podcast on all social media. If you just search "What Do You Like" podcast on all social media platforms, you should be able to find it. You can, if you have any questions or anything, you can email me directly at jeremy@whatdoyoulikepodcast.com. That should work. Again, this is a new, so all this stuff might not work.
It'll work. I know.
So,
I believe in you.
I mean, right now, again, this is going to come out sometime in August. As you record right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get in all the major podcast things. Hopefully you're listening to it on either iTunes, Stitcher. But again, Matt Knicks, it's been a pleasure. Really thrilling conversation. And I think we learned a lot about, obviously we learned a lot about alien theories, but also we learned a lot about you and like what really drives you. And that's kind of the goal of this podcast. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this might also be released on your podcast feed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm going to dump it on there as well.
So anyone that is a fan of my Violet Tendencies, and it's violet like the color.
Yes.
Consider giving us a listen. Podcasts. None of the podcasts are going to be just like this. That's the unique thing about the What Do You Like podcast is every conversation can be different because every person's different. So definitely give us a listen, give us a follow if you're interested. But again, thank you again, Matt Knicks, and everyone else.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone else, we'll see you next time. I might keep that in.